Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Live Pod. Today we have on Josh Jones, 1/6 owner of Augment House, and Black Lotus Creative. Thank you very much for having us today in your beloved home. We're not going to disclose location. That's nobody's information. Thank you very much for having us, bro.
No, it's a pleasure, man. Thank you guys so much, and thank you for having me on. I'm very much looking forward to this.
Pleasure is ours.
Well, I think the first thing we want to touch on is for those, again, because not a lot of people do know what you do because you're very, not secretive with what you do, but it's hard to sort of pinpoint. Like, you know, for example, if we do a podcast, you can tell this person does a podcast. Like you do a bit of content, you do a bit of this, you're always
a
reading
PT, I'm a real estate agent.
Yeah, it's like you're always reading books. Like nobody really knows what Josh Jones does. So fill us in.
Yeah, no, fantastic. I think, and I'll say to what I said to you boys before, again, a big part of, this is pretty big for me because, again, like I said, I'd never thought that I'd ever do another podcast because I've done a few. And I think the biggest thing for me as to why I didn't want to do one is because I felt like there was that layer of inauthenticity behind it. At least for me, you know, I felt like a lot of the times you try to paint a picture and it's always through rose-tinted glasses. And this is for the first time in a very long time that I felt comfortable being in front of the camera and also just kind of being able to more authentically articulate it and also just, you know, tell the real on it all. So I suppose the best way to describe what I actually do is I'm a strategy consultant.
Okay.
So what I mean by that is I have a knack for taking people's ideas and expanding upon the vision. You know, it's something that I've done for a very long time. I have had a very long storied career in multiple different areas. I used to work in the fitness industry before getting into investments and private equity, finance, basically banking and everything, before finally starting to kind of come into my own, start my own things like the Black Lotus Creative, which is our content creation company, Augment House, which I came into as an already established company, and that's just a marketing monster on its own. And then starting to be able to better articulate when people ask me, what do I do? Finally be able to answer it. Because, it's been a tough thing for me as well.
So correct me if I'm wrong. You were in the fitness industry before you went into finance.
Yeah.
Oh, so you PT'd, then worked in a bank, and then moved out of that.
I've stumbled from one success to another. That's the best way to put it.
And I think going back on not knowing, you know, how to, I guess, label what you do, and I think we're in a world now where things change all the time and there's these new positions that do come up for everyone. Again, with e-commerce, just this massive shift in society where these roles will come up where we actually haven't had them before or identified them or have had the importance of them before.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really funny. I think in today's society, the way that I've been looking at it, especially with a few of the moves I've been making lately, like I've been going overseas to, you know, countries that are moving probably a lot quicker, you're starting to realize that, you know, you see things coming out like the AI, everything, and the world's moving at 1,000 miles a minute. And you're right, new opportunities are popping up, and I guess that's how I found myself where I am. Some people would just come to me with an idea and would go for a walk, and all of a sudden we've got a blueprint for something that is significantly larger now. And that's why I feel like I'm quite lucky in that sense that my skill set that I have now is growing alongside the environment that we find ourselves in. So very, very lucky.
In terms of that, so with the whole vision thing you were saying before, is that, so let's say hey Josh, I have an idea of, I want to make chessboards, but I'm not sure how to go about it. So that's my vision. And then you help actually implement. Is that what it is? Like, cool, you need an ABN, you need X, Y, Z to actually get it up and running. Is that more so, am I on the right track?
Yeah, you are. Not so much the intricacies and more so the larger vision as a whole. Like a great example is I helped a friend. I'm going to keep a bit things out here because he's still working through it. But he had a particular idea where he required a lot of capital to execute on it. And that's what he came to me for because of my investment background. I have a lot of connections to equity. If anyone needs any money for anything, I can pretty much get it for them. And when we went for a walk, that's when I started expanding on his idea. And I was like, you're looking at it from point A. Why don't you look at it from point B? And he goes, what do you mean? And then we went down and we went in a completely different, what do you call it?
Yeah.
Different direction.
Yeah.
And what we found is that he didn't even really need any capital at all. His whole business model had changed. And it changed for the better. And ironically, I went overseas for a couple months and came back and he had executed on everything.
Fuck.
And not only was it he's seeing significantly more success now, he just didn't require the capital and therefore the debt that he thought that he would have. So I think that that's the best way to articulate it
Okay.
is you can give me an idea and I can break it down and
It's like simplify it
expand on
almost.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, give you more clear, direct vision on how to actually get there.
Mm.
I feel that's a big thing, especially in today's day and age of everyone wanting to, do startups or start their own thing. It's like, well, how do I do the thing? They
Yeah.
want to do the thing, make that change, or that large investment or whatever they think it is. But it's like there's this roadblock of what's the first step. So I feel like that's where someone like you would come in really, really handy.
And I think that that's probably, again, like I was telling you boys, that I struggled with it a lot because it was very difficult for me to articulate. Because you know how sometimes you could be really good at something without explaining it?
Yeah.
And then obviously what comes from that, especially because I found myself being able to do it, irrespective of whatever industry it was, I could do it. And I'm sure you boys have heard of this before, imposter syndrome. That starts kicking in because you're sitting there going, how do I know the answer? What makes me an authority in it when you're not necessarily? And that's why I struggled with it for a long time. I struggled to embrace that position.
Where do you think that came from? Did that ever come in school? Like, did you ever find yourself in maths equation, let's say, like figuring out things in a more simple way? Like, where did this mindset like stem from?
I've always been very analytical as a person. That's definitely where it came from. I always look to understand things as opposed to basically just try and ham fist my way through it.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what it is. And that stems in every element of my life as well, especially like literally every element of my life. I've always been like that, trying to understand something so that you can better define it or just improve on it. And yeah, same thing that would have started happening at school. Same thing. I'd look at it. It's like the argument with a teacher. They go, you do a math equation with a calculator. They go, well, you got to do it without the calculator. And I sit there and say, in my mind, when will I ever not have a calculator? You know what I mean?
Isn't that annoying though? Especially the school system. They teach you things and how to do things their way and not how other people necessarily see them. And that's a perfect example because I was always one that used to work things out on paper and not use a calculator.
Yeah.
And they used to be like, what? Use the calculator. It's your job. You need to use the calculator. It's like, I don't like using the calculator. They'd force you to do things in a certain other way. I think, so you're in your PT industry. What sort of shifted you out of that and then heading into the more finance side?
Well, this is the interesting thing. So I used to be, I hate to say this word, but I guess one of the OG influencers back in the day. It was a complete accident. A couple of my friends encouraged me to put up I had randomly got in shape. I'll tell you the short story of how I got in shape. It's the funniest thing, and a couple of the boys, I'm still close friends with everyone. A couple of the boys will have a laugh at this. The whole reason I even got in shape in the first place was because, do you remember the movie 300?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there used to be...
The Spartan movie.
Yeah, there used to be this thing called the Rugby Sevens way back in Wellington, and it was a big rugby tournament over a weekend.
The sevens are still going, aren't they?
Not how they used to be.
Okay.
It used to be a big dress-up event, right?
Oh, okay.
So this was peak 300 period, and all the boys were like, we should all just get in shape, and we'll go as Spartans. And I was the only one, like 9 months, man, I was the only one that got in shape.
Actually,
You gotta imagine how pissed off I was when I'm sitting there, bro, in a full half naked, and I've got two bros in a Batman and a Robin suit. You know what I mean? It's like, boys, come on, man, where's the commitment? But anyways, they encouraged me to start up a fitness page, so I did that, and I'll never forget. I wrote something about so I had like 60 followers, right? And the annoying thing, I hate saying this out loud, but I took it as this is funny as. I named it Swift, and the reason why I named it that was because it was my World of Warcraft character. It's funny as, man. I was back, super nerd back in those days as well. And so I named it that. So I had like 60 followers. I wrote a post about bullying in the gym from memory, and it got like 100. It got like 100 likes, and I was like, "That's random." And then I went to sleep. Woke up next day. There was like over 100,000 shares.
Which back in that day was
this would have
even in
been
today's day and age, like that's huge.
huge.
But for back then,
it would have been like 2000, just the end of 2012.
like you said, the Ziz era.
Yeah, like literally just after that, rest in peace after he just passed away. I feel like a lot of us in that time just kind of came up. So that happened. Now, that went for quite a while. I mean, that was my first time coming to Melbourne was because I came with a company. They flew me over. And what I noticed is that I started getting really toxic in that industry. It's probably the best way to put it. I started being very anti the entire industry. And the reality is if you approach any kind of business or any kind of thing from a negative place,
Yeah.
like a tech, I still see it today. It's funny as someone, I still watch people in the fitness industry, not naming any names, of course, but if your whole selling point is coming from an attack saying, people are idiots and blah, 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 or this is dumb, I'd rather be authentic, you're not really going to get really far with it. And that's what was, that's what was happening. I found myself, by income coming from online personal training, just declining because people were looking at me and, I wasn't inspiring or anything. I was negative more than anything.
Yeah.
So at that point, I was in a really messed up situation financially and just living situation. I was with my ex-partners. We're at her parents' house back in Perth. And I said to myself, something's got to change, man. And I regret this. I regret doing this. I'm sure I saw when my boy Ted, he was a guy back in the day as well. He's
Teddy.
Teddy.
Yeah. Him and I spoke about this not that long ago because what I did is something really stupid. I was like, the only way, because I had a pretty large following, and I said the only way that I'm gonna actually change is by deleting everything. So I deleted all my Instagram, I deleted all my Facebook, and then I said, I went back to basics. Sat there and said to myself, okay, what is my core skill set? I've always been good with numbers, I've always been analytical, and I've always been able to just look at statistics quite well. So I said, let me try get into finance. I had no degrees, nothing that could kind of put me in that situation. So what I did is I go, okay, what's the lowest access point, which is probably a sales desk job there. And I said, okay, how am I going to stand out? So what I did is use the rest of my money without sounding dramatic. It was like quite literally the rest of my money. I had about a couple grand left on an advanced diploma in financial planning. And I just wanted to put something of finance on my CV. So I slapped that onto my CV and started applying for jobs here. And I got an interview here. This was 2016.
So this is in Melbourne?
Yeah, because I was in Perth. Sorry, I was in Perth when all this was
So
unfolding.
you obviously grew up in New Zealand, and then when did you come to Perth, and why Perth? Like
my ex-partner's family was from there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
So you guys came from New Zealand together to Perth. Okay.
Yeah, got to Perth, got into that situation.
Yep.
Flew here for a job. Well, no, tell a lie. I got a couple telephone interviews for a job, which I thought was awesome. I was like, cool, maybe I'm going to get it. But they said, we can't really give it to you. We can't see you. Like, we just got to see how you are in person.
Yeah.
So I flew over for the day, did an interview in person. I knew I had the job the moment, because I met the CEO, and I knew I had the job the moment he started talking about the All Blacks. I was like, oh, man.
There we are.
Yeah,
Maybe
I
he
was
pulled
like,
the racist card.
Was he New
A
Zealand?
lighter shade of brown, hey?
Was he New Zealand as well?
He was half Kiwi.
And
Yeah, but you were like, what's up,
what's
Jake?
up,
What's
my
up,
man?
Margie?
Sorrows. And then, yeah, I got the job, and then everything just started picking up momentum from there.
Yeah.
Even that is a journey, and it's my finance career was a journey in itself. It's probably where I learned for the first time, and I've done a podcast on this before, but for the first time, how to play the game. So the corporate game, have you so how would I articulate this? Obviously, one thing that I learned really quickly when you're working in a corporate job is it does not matter how hard you work. You can work like a slave and you will get nowhere. If anything, you work too hard, you become too valuable in the position that you're in, and you shoot yourself in the foot. And that happened to me a couple of
That's
times.
so true.
Yeah, it is, eh?
I feel like that's with any like quote unquote 9 to 5. Even if you're at a cafe, you're cutting carrots. If you get really fast at cutting carrots, they'll just give you more carrots for the same amount of pay.
Do you think a type of power comes in that though too? Because you're such a hardworking employee that you're actually an asset?
Yes, but to an extent, because you're only an asset until the company can't afford you anymore.
Exactly.
So I think I'm just saying it from my perspective, because we are, being in real estate, you work for the brand, whether it's Ray White, Barry Plant, whatever. But if you're an exceptional agent, you're then an asset to that company. Like, they would be upset to lose you.
I feel like, because weirdly enough, this is a real funny thing. I have a weird story, man. I think I still have it too. I was the youngest qualified real estate agent in New Zealand. I got my real estate license when I was 15. That's
What
another.
the what?
Yeah. Just for
This guy's in year 10
Damn.
selling houses and shit.
no, because
Is it a legal thing that you have to?
How is that? What
oppose?
no, this was well before you had to go to uni and everything to do it. So all you needed was a certificate that you can get, and there was no age requirement beyond the
That's so cool.
yeah, there was no age requirement.
This little Kiwi kid just walking around the, hey, 3-bedroom,
Hey,
nice toilet,
sold.
ensuite.
Exactly. There was no age requirement beyond the working age, which is 15, obviously, right? And I was doing work experience at one. I was just, again, not doing well in school because I didn't operate the way they taught me. So anyways, I segued a lot there, but yeah, I know the real estate game a little bit. I think that's an outlier to an extent, because yes, you are definitely working for the company, but because of the way that you're structured, more often than not with commission, it's in their best interest to keep you happy, you know? Because if you're a high performing agent,
correct,
you are technically the brand, because
Yeah.
you know people want to come to you, as opposed to Ray White's the name, but you're the person that's, you know, built the connection and built the rapport, which I'll touch on later because I discovered the importance of that. Whereas within a corporate environment, at the end of the day, especially in finance where you're burning the candle at both ends all the time, you're a cog in a machine, and once the machine can work without you, you're gone.
Yeah.
It's
Well, it's
so
simple,
true.
like you said. It's like you're an asset as long as they can, you know, if you're earning, let's say $50 an hour, easy number, and then they can, you go up to 55 and then 60, like they're going to hit a point where like, well, we can just fire you and get someone else that can still do it for 50. It's like, yeah, that might be a little bit slow, but we're happy to pay that. So like you said, it's all a numbers game. It's like they just want the work done and the box ticked at the end of the day. They don't see it the way we do in terms of value and asset based.
I'm thinking of a story now where I have a friend of mine who their sibling worked, I think it was their mum, worked at Coles headquarters for 30 years. Great salary, like an amazing salary. And it was so funny because the week before we were talking about how these large corporations, like you just said, fuck you off and just fill something in, and they keep going. They couldn't care. 30 years down the track, they couldn't give a shit. And we had this conversation, and the week after, they had called me and we'll just say, oh, how's everything going? Like, yeah, mum lost her job at Coles. They just got rid of her, made her redundant. You know, great wage, there for 30 years, out with the old, in with the new, someone new to replace, a new mechanism, keep going.
Yeah, and it's very much like that, and I think that's why, you know, you were talking to me before about whether or not I like chess, because obviously there's the chessboard there.
Yeah, amazing chessboard.
It's probably the first time where I started looking at it like that. Now, what triggered this is there was actually an opportunity for a promotion within my team to deal with high net worth clients, and because one of the guys that was doing it, he left suddenly. He came to the company and then left suddenly. So he left a big hole. And what I did is I reached out to him and said to him, hey, I remember you pitched for this idea and you had a whole write-up of how you would approach it. Do you mind if I take it? And he goes, yeah, of course, because he didn't need it. So he gave me this whole document that he wrote. And me, in my innocence and I suppose ignorance, I actually shared it around with the team that, and they were all interviewing for it as well. So, you know, here's me going, they're like, you know, what are you doing to prepare? I said, I've got this document. They're like, oh, wow, that's cool. Can you share it? And I'm like, yeah, of course. You know, and I'm just thinking.
Unintentionally.
Yeah, unintentionally. And lo and behold, what ends up happening? I don't get the job. And that was that point where I said to myself, I said, okay, I'm not going to say I work a lot harder than all those boys, because shout out to all of them. They all worked very, very hard. But I said to myself, I've got to figure out how to play the game better. You know, I can't just be sitting here and filling in a seat and not being respected for, you know, my intellect and what I'm capable of bringing. And that's when I started playing the game. And by playing the game, I mean full blown
Chess.
Have you ever read the book? And I took this book way too literally. 48 Laws of Power.
Yeah.
That became my Bible.
So I read that book, and I think like you, I took it extremely literally. Like I was even like, you know, mum would come in and she'd be like, oh, I love you. Like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, I saw you shake your head before. So the 48 Laws of Power are basically 48 laws that are very self-serving in nature. But as much as I'd hate to admit it, they work, man.
It's fucked up.
Yeah, the first one, for example, is never outshine the master. And the idea behind that is you should try fly under the radar and build up enough credit to be able to move past that person. Because if you outshine them off the bat, have you ever been in a scenario where your boss has been happy that you've taken the limelight from them? Never, right? And that's what I mean. That's a prime example. One of my boss at the time was, as for lack of better words, a helicopter boss. He was around all the time. And he would take credit for a lot of the work that he never did. So what I ended up doing is I ended up working so well in my job that he eventually stopped flying around me. And then I was building up rapport with everyone outside, you know, people on his level, whilst also determining where I can provide value. And then when push came to shove, when I decided, okay, now's the time to attack, I approached someone that he couldn't say no to. And they said, yeah, I like your idea. I want you to run it. And the moment he brought it to my boss and said, "Yep, Josh has brought an idea and I want him to run point," my boss couldn't say anything about it, and he was furious. And that's what I mean when in the corporate world, at the very least, I started playing the game. I stopped thinking, how hard can I work until someone acknowledges it, and how can I build up enough social credit amongst people that are impactful and meaningful to be able to get ahead. And I got granular with it, man. Like, I got unhealthily granular with it. I'll give you boys an example. Like, I always use this example. Let's just say a meeting, I had a very important meeting where I wanted my idea to be heard. I'd always look for the kingmaker in that meeting. There's always going to be one person in that meeting that if they say yes, everyone's going to agree with them. And let's just say we'll give it, his name's John, right? If I know that I'm meeting John at 3 p.m. with a group of other managers, what I would do is I would message John in the morning. Well, I'd find out I already know what he's interested in. He could be interested in golf. I'm not interested in golf beyond smashing the ball at a driving range. But I'd go and see what happened in golf on that day over the weekend. And I'll go to John's desk and go, "Hey, man, did you see what happened to Tiger Woods this weekend?" And he'll be like, "Oh, man, yeah, it's crazy, right?" So, yeah, then I'd say to him, "I've been actually thinking about buying a new driver, and I'll send you some through Slack. You just let me know your thoughts on them." And then I'll go back, send them through. He'll look at them and go, "Mate," he'll come over to my desk and go, "Mate, this is definitely the one you should buy." And I'm like, "Oh, cool." I'll go at lunchtime and I'll be like, "Yeah, no, I'm still thinking about going and having a look at it now." And then I'll say, "By the way, we got that meeting at 3, right?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I go, "Okay, I've got a couple ideas for you." By that point, I had built up enough good rapport with him throughout the day that unless my idea was really, really dumb, I was always going to get the answer that I wanted.
Fuck, that's in like a 24-hour turnaround, just quick, just boom, boom, boom.
And I think that's what you were saying before, building rapport, even on a very, very small scale. When I was working in a retail store, just, again, being really close with the manager, having a laugh with them, being on their good side. If you're a little bit late from your break or whatever, even little things, just building that rapport puts you in the good books. Again, gives you leverage to move and play your cards how you want to play them rather than just being told what to do.
Chess.
It's
Exactly what
strategy.
it is.
Yeah, it's strategy.
And you can get so granular.
Sorry, I never mind.
You can get so granular with it. It got to the point where one thing that you notice about C-suite, CEOs, COOs, CFOs, they're so structured in their day, especially if you live in if you work in an open plan office, you'll notice that they do the same things every single day. You might have the CEO get his coffee from the kitchen at 11 a.m. every single day, and you just happen to be there every single day next to him. It might look like just an innocent accident, but you're just paying attention to his movements throughout the office. All of a sudden, you introduce yourself, and all of a sudden, you're talking to him more consistently. And then all of a sudden, you're in that same environment with people around you, and he's like, "Oh, hey, how was your weekend?" And people are like, "Why is the CEO talking to you?" And it's just those things that you build up. And it's wild. Like, you can get real subliminal with it. There were points where I knew that the CFO, for example, where they worked on the other side of the floor, he would come through the office consistently to go to the kitchen, and I'd just walk past him, and I'd be like carrying my iPad and like looking busy. And I'd be like, "Hey," and he goes, "Hey, how are you?" And, "Yeah, good, have a good day." And I'll do it like 2-3 times in a row. I can't do any of my work on an iPad. I'm just carrying an iPad around. The moment I walk without the iPad, guess what happens? Stops and talks to me. He goes, "Hey, I've seen you've been super busy." And it's like, "Yeah, no, I've been flat out." You've just seen, you think that I've been busy.
Fake news, bro.
Just playing World of Warcraft on your iPad.
You see what I mean? Like that, yeah. So that's what I got real, for lack of better words, toxic with it.
What was your, this is probably a difficult question, 48. What was your favorite law? What's your favorite law?
Reinvent yourself. I think it's number 17. And I think because we have this predisposed idea that you have to be whatever you are every time you wake up. It's like, man, you whatever you want to be. Like you wake up and you're able to pivot. That's one thing I feel like I represent. I pivot.
Are we including, is genders included or is this not genders included?
Oh, fucking hell.
There's one opening there.
Come on, man.
Oh, look, that's
another discussion.
I feel like we're all going to agree with what we're all thinking. I feel like we're on the same page. We're going to move on.
It's a tough one, right? So that's why part of the reason why I'm moving to Dubai. But anyways, yeah. No,
So you're moving to Dubai?
I am. I don't want to jump too far ahead because we will definitely get there. But I am, and that's for a few reasons. But yeah, on that corporate front, I think when it comes to my favorite law as well, reinventing yourself.
Yeah.
And I feel like that my story, especially as we go, there's still a few more steps into this. It epitomizes it, because I've always been able to pivot. And I think it goes back to the idea of what I was saying before, being able to articulate what my greatest skill is, and the fact that it can cross over to so many different areas.
I think a big take home from that, again, I haven't read the book, but just from that understanding, I'm a very literal person. So seeing that on a very surface level, even people working corporate, working 9 to 5, and they go, oh, I want to start a business, but they're just stuck to what they know and what they do. So they go, oh, I can't, or I don't do this. Or they're like, oh, I'm not sure what I should do after uni. It's like, try shit, pivot. Like you did real estate, then you did finance, and you did PT. It's like you've done a bunch of shit, and now you're actually doing the thing that you love and you're passionate about. And I feel like that's how everyone has to be. And Gary Vee's big on this. He's like, he put up a video, it was like someone saying, oh, I'm 30 years old, yeah, I don't know what I want to do. He's like, what the fuck's the rush? He's like, just keep trying shit until you find the one that you love. And there's nothing wrong with that. I feel like, I feel like, is that what you guys are trying to say with that?
Amen. I absolutely agree. I feel like a lot of people get in their heads and they think to themselves that you're supposed to have everything figured out. The only thing that you understand, like my perspective on life, and it's probably one of the things that brought me the greatest amount of peace as well, is philosophy, stoicism. You know, I'm very stoic in my character. The one thing that I love reminding myself is that the only guarantee in life is that you die at the end of it. And that's not to sound, you know, like, I don't know, like negative or anything. It's more to just come to terms with it. And then when you realize that, you go, okay, so why am I so worried about what happens in the middle? I think I follow a few certain rules. As long as I'm not hurting myself, like doing anything to decrease my lifespan, as long as I'm not hurting others, and as long as I just remain conscious that I'm living in a shared world, beyond that, man, just go for it. Just do things every day.
So with that and touching on that and that thought, when you say things that don't, you know, harm yourself or affect you, you're talking in the sense of like diet and, you know, and then getting into more.
I feel like it's very multifaceted. I feel like it comes as a whole. And I've been following you for a while. So like everything, it's like how you speak to yourself, what you read, what your environment, what you see, what you do, who you speak to. I feel like everything as a whole. Okay, let's say you're just following all these very negative people on social media that are very suicidal, whatever it might be. If you're constantly feeding yourself that at a subconscious level, you'd naturally just sort of decrease down to that level in anything, really. If you're always around people eating junk or whatever, it's like that whole thing. It's like you're the average of the 5 people you hang around with type thing.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things, and I struggled to come to terms with this because, again, ironically, I think it had to do with my corporate career and how I became so cold and calculated. And but I started warming up to the idea, and it was because of my mother, funnily enough. I'm a mama's boy through and through. She mentioned it one time. She said, you're very cold in your character and you've never been like that. And she said, you need to change it. And she got me a bit more in touch with, like, trying to get more in touch with the spiritual side of things. And one thing that I came to realize, and I struggled with it because I didn't want to admit that it was true, but energy, man, like just being protective of your energy and also understanding that you have a finite amount of energy every day. So you've got to be conscious of how you're utilizing it, because until you acknowledge it and accept it, you don't realize how much it's impacting you. And very much what you said, you could be sitting there consuming some stuff and you got to say to yourself, why am I doing this? Like what value? Again, value doesn't necessarily have to be something where you're, for one of my favorite sayings at the moment, moving the needle constantly. It's a little bit more about ensuring that whatever you're doing, it's purposeful, you know, whether as long as you're doing something every day with intent, it's like, okay, that's a good expenditure of energy.
I think a very simple way to put it for just general population listening is self-awareness, being aware of what you're doing, listening to. Like I do it very, very often, and I tell the people that, you know, because it happens to me, like I go through who I'm following on Instagram and I unfollow all the time. I'm like, I haven't seen this person in a while, do I care what they're doing? Not really. And a lot of people take it personal. I was like, it's not personal. It's like, I'm just clearing out what I don't really want to see that has no value to me, and that's not purposeful. So yeah, like I said, just being aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
Again, if you're like consuming that negative social media content, but you're just like, not like you're just blasé about it, you're just scrolling through it, it's going to have more an effect, and it's almost going to, not too late, but by the time you actually realize what the fuck's going on, you're like, oh shit, it's actually done some damage, and it's harder to come out of the hole.
Yeah, and that goes a bit further for even myself as a Polynesian. So my background's obviously Māori. I'm what do you call it? Putting us all in the same basket, Polynesians. One of the things about us as well is we struggle.
Fobs.
Yeah, fobs. Yeah, fresh off the boat. We struggle a lot with letting go of people because we feel like you have to do it to the greatest extent. And I think people don't realize that. You know, one thing about me, if something's off about someone and it's like impacting me in a way, I just move away from it. Sometimes you don't need a speech, or you don't, you know, you're not tied to someone at the hip. You know, it's not a ball and chain kind of scenario, right? Yeah. So from that perspective, it's like, again, Polynesian people struggle a lot because of our families. We're always told that the unit matters more than the individual. And it's like, even that, man, again, to all of my Polynesians out there, the individual matters more than the unit until the individual can take care of the unit. You know, if you're not right, you're not going to be able to help anyone.
I would love to touch on that, because one thing I can say maybe within the last 12 to 18 months of my life personally is the whole notion of you need to be the best version of yourself to help other people. Because if you're not in a good state, what you offer anyone else around you, whether they're friends or family, is not, not of any value.
100%. I think I have a saying for a real simple saying: change your world, change your circle's world, then try change the world, in that order.
But I think that statement of, be the best version of yourself, there is a lot of layers to it, because there's, in that process of being the best version of yourself, there is a lot of times, and I had it too, where you see family members who don't understand that, and they can see you as somewhat selfish at times, because what you're doing to them is just for you, but they don't understand that it's for the greater good, in the sense of you being the best version of yourself to help them in the long run. I've had heaps of arguments with like siblings and stuff like that, where they're just like, oh yeah, you're so selfish, you just don't care about anyone else, blah, blah, blah. And that's probably the hardest thing, is the conversations like that with your parents and with your family and with your close friends, where, you can come across as selfish. And, sort of touching on what Karim was sort of saying about, doing his thing to help him become the best version of himself, and other people seeing him, oh, Karim's selfish, he unfollowed me on Instagram, like, what a selfish person. All these things, that's the hardest thing about it, is...
Yeah.
Sorry, I think there's two things on that. Is number one is, I think, yeah, it's normal. If you do want to really level up, and we see it all over social media, like people like Peter Try, the best of the best in the world, you do have to be selfish. And that's my personal opinion. I feel like if you really want to level up yourself, you got to dig deep. You got to not speak to a bunch of people from time. You need to take, like, your day should be self-consumed. And I think that's normal. I don't see it as...
I think selfish is the wrong word.
I think there's an element that we're missing here, and it's what you said before. It's dependent, because, yeah, your family, like, the only way that you're going to be right in your actions is if you're self-aware. So as long as you're self-aware and you're realizing and you're reevaluating yourself all the time, and you know that what you're doing is right, that's when you're in the right. And I always say, especially to my family and everything, and even friends, don't put your expectations on me. Your expectations of me are your expectations, not mine.
Yeah.
Spot on. Yeah, and that's what I mean. As long as you're self-aware and you're aware of the direction that you're going, and you're constantly evaluating, then you have every right to be selfish, because in that selfishness, you're going to be able to help a lot more people.
Yeah. If you're, not seeing your friends and family, but yeah, and they ask you about it, and you go, well, I don't care, that's what I have to do, well, then, obviously not the right way to go about it. If you're going, hey guys, I need to do this for me, and on the other side of this, it's going to be a lot better, and then I can spend more time with these X, Y, Z. And like you said, being self-aware and letting them know that I'm not doing this out of hate or anger or ignorance. I'm doing this for a better version of me.
Sorry. Oh, yeah, go.
I want to play like devil's advocate here and sort of ask you the question is, and then on that, it's, all right, I'm spending a lot of time away from family because I'm doing all this work, right? And let's just say me, for example, we'll use it for me because I wouldn't want to do that, but I'm doing a lot of work on myself and I'm not spending time with my family, but next week my mum, let's just say touch wood, something happens, seriously, they're gone. What the fuck does that work mean then?
I have a real world example of this. So this is my single biggest regret in my life by a country mile. When I came over here, I hadn't seen my grandmother for about 6 years, and that was purely because my own personal choices. I was again so focused on it, and I think that this has an element to play in the self-aware. And she passed away, and that's probably, I don't care what people say when they say I have no regrets. Nah, that's an absolute regret of mine, and something that I have to live with for the rest of my life. Because that was probably where I've never felt that kind of pain in ever, because that's when I started acknowledging that that was purely my choice, And again, it was a lack of self-awareness for the age that my grandparents were at, their health in general, and just not paying attention. And I think that that's that point that I make, is exactly that. You're like, I agree, but I think the fundamental key to being able to function that way is being self-aware, because you life still doesn't stop just because you're going, you know, and life doesn't stop for you too when you decide to stop.
Yeah.
I think there's also like a bit of a fine line. Like we're sort of getting into it now, but I'm generally speaking about, again, the stuff you see on social media. Like if your friends want to go out for dinner and you got shit to do, sorry, I'm not coming. Hey, friends, come over, let's go watch a movie. I'm not coming. But for me personally, I'm big on that. And I experienced it, again, same thing last year. My granddad was very sick and I made sure I'd go and see him every couple of weeks. And now, like, obviously it's sad that he's gone, but I made that effort to, you know, put family before work. But yeah, I'm still on a bigger scale. It's more so when your friends, hey, let's go clubbing or let's go to a bar or I'm like, bro, why? What, like, that gives me zero value. And a lot of people get upset by that even. It's like 90% of it, I reckon 99% of the decisions I make, either, the way I see everything is either every decision you make is going to pull you closer or further away from your goals. And that's how I see it. So if I want to stay up late, well, that's pulling me further because it means I'm not going to sleep, I'm not going to be well rested, I can't focus as much, can't blah, 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 etc. And then it's a flow on effect. Or it's like I could go to sleep now, get up earlier, start my meal prep, X, Y, Z, and then that's that one step close, that 1% effort that keeps pushing you forward.
This is an interesting thing because ask me almost 2 years ago, and I'd agree entirely with everything you said. And I do agree. I agree that when push comes to shove, when it's work time, it's work time. You know, if you know that you need to do this work, you should absolutely be doing it. But you shouldn't be so blind to not realize the opportunities that come with you being places. And when we get to Dubai, oh, trust me, that's where that's prime example of what I'm talking about. And that's one thing that I had to learn because I was like that heavily, especially at the start of last year, just being like, okay, I got to be here because I know where I need to go. And it's like, yeah, but by just being here, like are you getting it done a lot quicker than you need to, cool, whatever. But by just being here, you're missing out on a lot of opportunities because at the end of the day, people are what matter in terms of everything.
Networking.
And that's and even networking. Like the way that we networked in Dubai or the way that I've started to learn how to network now is such a different approach, but it works. And I think that it's that element of saying, yeah, when it's work time, do it. And then when something pops up and you know full well that you're capable of going into that scenario, do that as well. Because that is still an opportunity. And again, you're not going to get it if you don't get out there.
It just comes back to self-awareness though. Like obviously, again, like obviously you're self-aware that if you're going clubbing, you probably won't network. You probably just have a lot of alcohol and be surrounded by, you know, drugs and that environment. But then if you're going out with a certain group of people, you're self-aware that specific catch-up will be great for your networking.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
So it all comes down to self-awareness.
It really is. But even at that point, I think it's more so for me personally, I like to think of it as being self-aware of what your responsibilities are more than anything. Like if you know you need to do work, you will need to do work. And just making sure you prioritize it, basically. But again, all self-awareness. So, yeah, I suppose the highlight of this at the moment is, the self-awareness, just being able to be aware of everything that you're doing.
I wanted to touch too on your finance background. You mentioned capital and everything too, because it would be really good to sort of get into, you know, businesses these days. And I haven't heard of a business in a while where that requires a lot of capital and stuff like that. So I guess, how are you, just in general, the finance and everything that's happening in the moment, the shift in society with things? What are you sort of?
I think what Michael was trying to ask is like, do you have a basic philosophy for like a startup that doesn't
correct.
require a lot of capital?
That's it.
Yeah, mate.
It really comes down to the business, I suppose. You know, it's really dependent on like how you structure the business. I suppose the best example is the one I gave before. Again, I can't describe too many details because he's just in the building phase. But it's one of those points where you've got to look at all the options of how you can effectively generate income from it, right? Because there's always different things. Like one of the big examples of that is SaaS models at the moment. You know, that requires you to basically build something. More often than not, you can bootstrap it by getting a couple $100,000 from friends and family and just doing that, and eventually putting it to a point where you can get it up and running and then run a SaaS model where then you're getting a recurring revenue every month, right? But it's dependent. It's really depending on the business model. Like, am I answering that, or how are you thinking?
What I was going to say, just for the people who don't know, how would you describe a SaaS model?
What is it like? Sales as a service, basically. So what you're doing is you're providing something like, what's a great example that everybody would know? Canva. Canva is the best example of a really good SaaS business model. You pay a subscription-based model that allows you access to whatever specific tools or whatever that you have. And yeah, you pay that monthly or annual subscription for it. That's an easy way to start generating cash flow quite effectively. And a lot of the times, all of those businesses that are associated with them, because most of them are tech, it doesn't require as much development as you think. More than anything, it requires attention, you know, because you can have the greatest idea or the greatest app, but if you can't get it out in front of the people, then it doesn't matter.
Funny you talk about attention. One of the things what we wanted to touch on was we all in a position now where we sort of do a bunch of things. We don't just do one thing. Now, this is something I got off Reese Livingstone. I'm not sure if you know Reese.
Yeah, no, Reese. Shout
So
out,
he's
Reese.
shout out Reese.
Shout out Reese.
He said you can't have priorities. You have to have a priority at one point in time. Because if you have priorities, it means that one thing is above another, meaning that the thing underneath is getting less input and attention. So when we're in a position like us and Reese, we're doing a million different things. We've got like 3 or 4, let's say, business areas or whatever it might be. How do you know how to fill the buckets?
Well, ironically, by having more people. So again, 1/6 of the machine. I'm not going to steal this quote because I know my mate, one of my business, what do you call it? Things, Sam Chambers, shout out, bro. He has a saying, and I absolutely love it: owning your corner. So the whole idea behind that is that you should be very, very, very good at one element of the business, and you should be confident in everyone around you's ability to own their own corner, and then just having faith in it. So my answer to that is, and weirdly enough, I spoke to Reese about this, I think, as well. You know, it's like if you can fill in those CFO, COO positions as quickly as humanly possible, you find that you can focus on what you need to be focused on and what you're good at. So a great example from that, from my perspective, is again, strategy consulting. So I'm good at being able to articulate the vision. One of the other boys is being good to articulate the actual strategy in terms of execution. One of the other boys is good at doing the creative and making sure that the creative is all on point. And then a couple of the other boys are good at the branding and also just the influencer marketing. But you see, it all works as a system. So I suppose the best way to put it is to just have more people, you know, just have more people that are owning their corners.
Use the strengths of who you have in your corner. Well, let's use myself or Michael as an example. We have our sole job, like he's in real estate and we do the podcast, you know, every week pretty much. When would you say, you know, I'm just going to still do my job in real estate, but I really want to push the podcast? Like, how do you know when to go, I want to do this more than this right now in this point in time?
I think it's when you've got a proven concept in terms of the business, in terms of generating an income. One of the things that I've always been firm on is making sure that and again, I think it comes down to the whole chess kind of mentality, is ensuring that you've got bases covered. You know, like my finance, again, not financial advice, although I like when people say not financial advice. It doesn't really cover you on a lot of things, but more importantly, you're not really giving financial advice half the time. Just because you say put money into this, you know, unless you're going there and making the person put money in, you're not really giving them financial advice. But the big thing for me is I've always been like, get a bank account, put about 10, 20 grand in it as an emergency fund. Get another bank account that has about 6 months to a year's worth of expenses in, and make sure that those short things are covered. Now, if you've got those things covered and you've got a business in front of you that you know if you put all in and can generate enough income to replace all of that within that time period, then you go for it. But you make sure you have that. You know, a lot of people, I find it foolish sometimes when people go for the slingshot thing. You know, when they're more fascinated in the story rather than the actual work and what, you know, taking a practical approach to taking that leap.
Yeah.
You know, it's cool. You still have a story, but it's cool to kind of be practical about having that story as well.
Yeah, 100%. And again, that just comes back to knowing your path and what you want to do, and then preparing for that, having that $10,000-$20,000 is, you know, safe money, and then having 6 months of expenses worth there as well. Like, that's just smart. It's the same thing too when people, I had this discussion with someone else too, when it came to like property investing. People just think, I need my 10% deposit and stamp duty as well, and then I'm good. I said, no, you need at least another, again, $10,000 to $20,000 as emergency money. You buy, especially when you're buying residential, and especially when you're buying a home that's old and you need to pay for things, and you know, if you've got tenants in there and all that stuff too. Like, it's just understanding. I think it comes back to understanding your goal, reverse engineering it all, and then identifying what needs to be done for that process.
Absolutely. I think that I've always worked in that way as well when it comes to the practical elements of everything.
Yeah.
Instead of looking at the vision, start where you want to be and then just work back, go Z to A. and then you eventually just have steps and processes, and then focus on the step that you're on.
Yeah.
You know, like don't jump the gun.
No.
Yeah,
You can't.
You don't need to worry about that until this is done.
Yeah. You find if you're jumping that gun, all those other steps, you just crumble because again you're missing things. It won't add up.
It's not the foundation.
Correct.
You're not building the foundation.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think business models. It's such an interesting time too because people, and going back to what Karim was saying, a lot of people have got a few different types of jobs at the moment, and it's really hard. And this is why it's great. Like your, I guess, new strategy as a strategy consultant, it's fantastic because I feel like there's a massive gap in it now for people who have ideas but just don't know how to do them, or just don't know the right approach to take them.
Yeah, it's one of those things. And this is how I started justifying it in my head because again, it was really weird. It like I said to you boys just before, it wasn't until a couple of days ago where I started feeling comfortable, and it was because of a conversation that I had with a friend that was here. Really weird as well because again, for lack of better words, I've always been viewed as a leader, natural born leader. So a lot of people tend to look to me for advice.
What's your star sign?
I'm not gonna lie, I don't partake in them particularly, but I am Gemini?
Gemini,
Yeah, I am Gemini.
What's your angel numbers?
Ah, see,
that shit. Hey, that's
I'm real poking the bear here, huh?
that's it. Hey, what is it? That 2:22 p.m. stuff. Send that DM out to everybody. No,
What is it, like 11:11, make a wish or something? I don't
Yeah.
know.
But nah, she's helped me to articulate it a lot better because she asked me the same thing. Because I said, if you looked at me, what would you say that I'm good at? And she goes, like, everything. She goes, and she said, it's really hard to articulate. And then I said, that's the hard part of the problem. But what I found is that how I start justifying it now is like some of the best coaches in the world in terms of the, NBA, all of that, just never really the best players. It's just that they could have the vision for it. And
So
I've always been real hesitant about it as well. Like I said, and I'm not trying to poke the bear or anything like that with this one, but I've never really felt comfortable with it because I think that there's a stigma with whole like coaching and all that kind of stuff, and that's why I looked at it and I was like, I don't want to articulate it because I don't sit there and try to make you feel better about yourself, and I've always tried to figure out how to articulate that. I've never needed to because I've always had people coming to me for business anyway, but then I started realizing it was like, well, again, I strategize. I sit there and we have a very real vision that unfolds. Like I have your idea and I show you where it needs to go, how it needs to get there. And I pretty much hold your hand along the way as we figure out every problem that comes up.
How does that go with a lot of people who, have that? Because some people that do start businesses, they're very headstrong and can sometimes be somewhat arrogant in the sense of like, nah, this is my idea, I want to do it. How do you find yourself
It's
dealing
like,
with
it has to be this way.
Has to be this way.
And you have to tell them, hey, bro, I don't think it's going to fucking work, bro.
I appreciate your idea, but I feel like it should be this way.
I just don't work with them. It's the easiest way to do it. With the clientele that I work with at the moment, like I'm starting to come down slowly to, smaller businesses, but I work with a lot of big companies. And because of that, it's never been a problem. Like they're very much respectful of the fact that we pay you X amount. We're not
do
gonna
your job.
Go off and do your job,
we're not gonna do that. But I understand, and I think that I've been in a position, thankfully, because like I've done it with a particular kind of business area for a while now, where ego does come into play, and I've had the pleasure of just being able to say, oh yeah, cool, go on then. If you've got a predisposed idea of where you want to go, and it could be a good idea, but I feel like there could be a little bit more elaborated on it. But if that's where you want to go with it, then absolutely. I don't need the stress, I don't need the time, and I quite frankly don't need to maintain that relationship if I don't need to, because I don't want to have that energy. Don't want to have the stress on myself.
Another thing I wanted to touch on is how that links with just goal setting in general, and what you're taking. I know you have a free ebook if anyone wants it. It's on his Instagram. Yeah, he's got a free goal setting ebook. Use it. So yeah, do you like? I know for myself, the way I've been taught about what I do, I look at the bigger picture and then slowly reverse engineer into sort of smaller steps and break it down like that. What's your sort of approach for goal setting?
Exactly the same way. We spoke about it just before. Going on to Z and moving back to A. I think the idea, you've got to understand where you go, like where you're going, because then it's going to be much easier to just reverse engineer it and go, okay, I can't get there without getting here. I can't get here without getting to these two places. And then you get this little web, and then you go, okay, I'll start there.
Web.
Yeah. And then more importantly, again, the biggest thing though is do not jump the steps. Like just stay on, if you're on B, stay on B. Don't go and look at C until B is done. Because then again, you start thinking too far ahead, and then you start, I don't know, you just get in your own head about everything.
Well, I think that's a very good note to touch on. A lot of people, and this is a very important, and we've spoken about it so many times, the importance of actually having a goal. If you just say, and I went through this literally 2 weeks ago, I was telling Michael, I was in a shit mental state with my business. I was like, oh, I'm not growing, whatever, need more money, whatever it might be. And I was like, wait, do I actually know what my 3, 6, 12-month goals are? Do I have a clear outcome that I'm trying to achieve? Because if you say more money, somebody could technically give you $1 and you have more money. But if you don't have a clear outcome that you're trying to achieve, you're literally chasing your tail. It's like, oh, I want to build a lot of muscle. Yeah, but where? Which body parts? Where do you want to go? What are you trying to aim for? And then you can actually do the reverse engineering and find the web. But if you're just trying to improve, what does that actually mean? So I feel like that's a really big thing.
1,000%. And I think that comes into play of everything that we said before as well, on the notion that if you don't know what you're doing, then just keep doing things until you eventually figure it out. But 100%, I think I tell you one, funnily enough, that I feel like a lot of people don't do enough, and what I like to call kind of the wealth equation, right? Yes, having more money is brilliant, but one thing that I learned is not only is that's one part of it. The other thing that you need to understand is, and I mean very literally, what do you actually want out of life, especially material? I know a few people who are infinitely more successful than me, and I respect them for it, but they're some of the most depressed people that I know, purely because they don't know when enough is enough, because they've never done the second part. They've made a ton of money, but they don't know where was the get off point. Like for me, I've got a very clear get off point. Like in terms of once I reach a certain figure, I know that that's all that I'll ever need to achieve what I want from a materialistic and just, worldly possessions perspective, right? But if you don't have that, you're going to be on your 15th Ferrari very quickly, and your third mistress very, very quickly, and you're just going to be consumed by everything, because more money just means that you're just the playground becomes bigger.
It's so interesting that you touched on that, because the name of our show is The Life Pod. And, with everything in life, you think there's an answer to it. And life is one of those things where I don't think in the history of existence, from the past in the future, nor will one person have the answer of what is life and how do we balance it. From your perspective, though, what is the perfect balance of life? Because you've just said there's definitely those two factors. There's definitely the monetary side, and it's not even the fact of, for me, it's not wanting to be rich. For me, having wealth is just creating time, in this life that we have.
It creates freedom in multiple aspects,
Correct.
and that's all we want.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, we're all in the same position where we want financial freedom, ideally location freedom, and time freedom.
Absolutely, yeah.
But then there's also the other side, which is the spiritual and energetic side.
Well, funnily enough, and this is one thing that I really pushed to a lot of people during COVID. One thing that I find that people struggle with a lot, actually, is, and I did this because the fitness industry is what taught me this, is I've always thought of, let me try to remind myself, mental, physical, spiritual, learning in general, and obviously, what was the other one? Financial, I think. You've got to cover creative. You've got to cover all these bases so that you're not dependent on one. Because if you take one away, look how many people struggled once they couldn't go to the gym, and it was like because you haven't filled any other areas or fulfillment of your life.
Is that similar to what Danielle Weber was saying? She's like, you've always got 5 things in your life, but you can only do 3 really well. She's like, you've got like your relationships, your health, and like one other thing, and 2 other things might suffer a little bit. It's like you can't do all 5.
Yeah, and that was an interesting thing, and I think that's quite correct too, to a degree. So we had Danielle Weber on. She's an artist, and she came to the point. She was saying, you usually have about 4, let's just say slots, massive slots in life. Let's just say 5, for example. And if you try to add a 6th, one of those will drop. Or if you try to add a 7th, the other one will drop. And I've seen it firsthand for myself. Like, you can be very, very into the gym, and like, let's just say you've got a competition and want to build that physique. You will find that if the time and effort and energy you're putting into that in the gym, you'll find that one other thing will drop off, whether it's your personal relationship, whether it's maybe your work ethic towards your other business, maybe it's, your work at your job place. You'll find that one of the other things usually drops off. So that's the thing. It's just about balance, and morphing them all together?
I've found a contrasting, and this is the beauty of life, right? Everyone has their own opinion of things. I've been always of the opinion you should be an expert at something, but you should always be a balanced individual. And that's what I mean. Like, because that's what has always allowed me to not be reliant. Best example is, again, when I was in Dubai, my training was not consistent, but because I had other elements of my life that I could rely on in terms of keeping me sharp as an individual, I didn't start mentally suffering. You know, I started going, oh my God, I'm not going to the gym. I'm starting to feel out of shape. I'm starting to hate myself. It's like, nah, man, I'm, like a better words, we use this word over there, I'm running the ball. I'm doing something different. You know, we're running with business. Our mentality is on point and we're doing a lot of creative stuff. So it's like I wasn't so dependent. As someone that uses fitness as an anchor for my life, like I start every day going to the gym and everything like that. If the anchor's taken away because I'm such a balanced individual, because I'm also paying attention to other elements, I feel okay. So I do agree with that, but I think it's more important to get more granular, for me at the very least, to say I'm an expert here, but that has nothing to do with me also just making sure that my corners in terms of just me and as an individual, like I'm taking care of myself physically, mentally, spiritually.
Everything came back to self-awareness.
Yeah, amen.
And perspective though as well.
Yeah,
perspective's huge as well. What's been the change with you recently? So what? First of all, I guess it'd be good to sort of touch on what you're doing now, your businesses and everything like that.
What are the steps for Josh moving forward?
Yeah,
some of the stuff. Oh yeah, go. Yeah.
Yeah, and what? Because you've sort of implied that you've had a shift recently.
Yeah. Some of the stuff is crazy. Some of the stuff I can't even talk about. So a lot of the stuff that we do at Augment House, we actually do a lot of things politically. And that's why there's a lot of NDAs. So it's real funny because, some people will look at me and they'll be like, what are you doing? And it's like, a lot of the stuff I can't actually say. But the Augment, and what we are the masters of understanding how to utilize emotion, emotion for decision making. And
red brain, green brain.
Yeah, and I think that that's why we run like a well-oiled machine. You know, we did that a lot with a couple of things we did. We did a hip-hop and R&B festival, the boys.
Juicy Fest. Yeah, I saw that.
How was that?
That was insane. You know, I think...
Is that going to be an ongoing thing? Sorry to cut you off. 2024.
Lineup's coming soon. Hey, get ready. Yeah. And there's a few boys that are behind that whole thing, and shout out to all of them that are working hard on it. But that's a great example. You know, we used human emotion and we understood we had such a clear idea of what Juicy Fest was. What was the tagline? Freshly squeezed hip hop and R&B nostalgia from the 2000s. Moment you say something like that instills curiosity in the people. Correct. You know, it's like, how they always say that you've only got, if I'm with a friend, I say this to all my friends when they're telling me the ideas. I'm like, you're able to articulate your idea to me because I gave you the time. But if I was a stranger, I wouldn't give it to you. But if you could say to someone like, what's Juicy Fest? Oh, it's freshly squeezed hip hop and R&B nostalgia from the 2000s. That makes them go, what?
Explain.
Yeah. And then boom, there's your 15 minutes. And I think that that's what we were able to do. We were able to take an emotion and make people feel a certain feeling they felt back when the artist that we brought, Nelly, Neo, Ja Rule, made them feel that.
Fuck, that's huge.
So that when the time came, like people were wondering, what the hell is Juicy Fest when we were leading up to it?
It's pre-framing.
Yeah, pre-framing. And building that.
And building the expectations as well, yeah. People buy with emotion.
Yeah. And the moment we dropped, 50% sold out in 24 hours. Yeah,
that is unbelievable.
Yeah, even a lot of the bigger players in the industry now are starting to come to the team, to all the boys, and being like, what? Or how? You know what I mean?
I want a part of this.
Yeah.
And what was the lead up there? Did you have anything, or did you just have an idea and like, you know what? Fuck it, we're going to do this?
Well, I came on, again, and this is the importance of team. I'm not going to take credit for it. There's one of the guys in the background who pretty much quarterbacked everything, and then a couple of the other boys who are good on the creative side, and then I got brought in from a strategic perspective. Same thing. And I think that that's the importance of it, and also acknowledging it, man. A lot of people can come on these things, and that's what I mean, make it sound like they're there. Nah, man, I'm 1/6 of a machine that runs like a well-oiled machine because we all do something.
Yeah.
But that's that point, as they came to me and said, "Wait, we're doing this. We could use your input as well," and then boom, we just rolled with it. And that's the thing, masters of understanding emotion and how to articulate emotion to the point where we get people to feel it enough that they want to do something. And when you, like I said, if we could pull back the Iron Curtain and you could see everything, it'll blow your mind away, especially from a political perspective.
One last thing before we wrap up is what's in for Josh for 2023? Like what are the moves?
2023, stepping into, and I feel like this is important, stepping into who I am. That's been one of the most difficult things for me for the longest time.
Self-awareness.
Yeah. The most difficult things I've struggled with is being able to articulate what I do. And I feel like because of a couple of close friends around me, they've managed to finally help me realize that. But more importantly, feel comfortable being a leader. You know, like it's one of the hardest things sometimes people don't realize. Leadership is something you can build it over time, but if it's inherent, it's a bit harder because people are going to come to you anyway. I know I attract a lot of people to me. And more importantly, I'm starting to realize that whilst I may not necessarily feel as though comfortable in it, I've got to come in and own it, because if I'm being put in that position and it's just coming naturally, just got to accept it. So that's the biggest thing for me in 2023. It's about finally stepping into what I should be doing and owning it, and more importantly, just stepping up to the plate and guiding people.
Would you say on a very, very basic level that's almost like finding fulfillment?
Yeah, man, 100%. You know, finally finding something where it's like okay, owning my corner. Finally having my corner and
having
owning
your
it
own
fully.
back.
Yeah.
Fuck, that's huge.
Yeah. So
I was just going to say, it's just interesting because, again, speaking to someone too, and I saw a video recently on social media where they were just elaborating on, you know, why are Jewish people so successful? And it's because they work in fucking teams.
Yep.
And we're in a fucking society now where there is just all this thing where you as an individual have to be successful, or you as a sole person, if you didn't do it on your own, then you're nothing.
Western society, man.
Even
It's
if we
Western
look
society.
at a prime example of each person in the circle makes good money. That's like Troy Candy and his group.
Yeah.
They've all launched G-Up, which has done fucking exceptionally well. But it's like they all have a lot of money individually. Like Troy, Oscar, Nick, they've all got a lot of money. But they didn't just go, oh, no, I'm going to launch this. It's like, why don't we do this together? We've all got strong points. We can all help each other and make more money and be more successful with the service/product that we're trying to launch.
And put that on a lower scale. If you want to start a business and you've got an idea and you've got friends around you that can contribute to that, don't go off and do it on your own to show them, oh, I'm fucking better than you. Do it with them, in conjunction with them, and use, again, going back to use their strong points to create a system, to create a business that'll flourish and grow. And, you know, it's all about a network in the end.
I think we're here. It's prime example. It's like he's really good at some things, I'm really shit at others, and we balance each other out. And then that's how the life works.
The reality of it is, again, and I learned this because I grew up in Singapore when I was a kid.
Wow.
And so I was around Chinese culture a lot. And the thing that I learned from that experience is, in Western society, we consider it a privilege to be working hard. So when we work hard, we wear it as a weird badge of honor. And we wear it to the point where it's detrimental to us. See, and the Chinese, I remember my neighbors, there was like 6 generations in that house. And I was like, that's crazy. But what you don't realize is they're all contributing. And, you know, 10 years later, they've got like 15 homes because they understand it. You know, like a Chinese families, the parents might just sit there and go, okay, you want to buy a home now? Cool. We'll take equity out of our house so that you can get started. And then they go, okay, so now that we've got 2 houses almost fully paid off, why don't we take out equity in both of them and get another one? You will never see that in Western society. Your parents will always say the same thing to you. They'll look at you and go, I worked hard for it, you have to as well.
So
Fucking facts.
Yeah.
Not for us as wogs, but like facts in society. Fuck, that's so true.
it is, and you see it today. And, like, you know, being in real estate, you see that stuff. From, you know, sort of on a side topic, you know, where we are now in the world, what are your views on investing, and what would be some great investment options that you'd think?
AI, 1,000%.
Yeah.
The reality is that is taking over to a great extent. The standard investing in yourself a lot more. And I'm not talking just financially, I'm talking literally take more time to understand yourself. You know, it's not some big financial investment. It's literally sitting there and getting more granular with who you are so that you can figure out and you can be more fitting. One of the things, and one of the reasons why I like living up here, I'm just going to get real honest with you guys here. A part of the reason why I like living up here is because I see cars go back and forth all the time. I see them go back and forth on the highway all the time. And it serves me as a reminder saying, how can I make sure that I stay away from that? And a lot of that allows me to start thinking a lot more about, well, what can I do as a person to provide more value? So that's what I mean when I say invest in yourself. Understand what you're very, very good at and find out how you can leverage it. And in terms of raw investments, honestly, right now, AI is probably the biggest thing. Because everything else is kind of red.
Anything you can
Did you say rigged?
Red.
Oh,
Red.
I feel like in general, just there's a whole nother conversation, but just trying to, any business you have, really try and automate and systemize things. I feel like it's a really big thing.
1,000%. The more that you can automate things, the more you free up time. And ultimately, that's what we want to do, right?
And even from a consumer standpoint, especially if it's a service-based business, you reduce friction.
Hey man,
Anytime you can reduce friction, makes buying easier.
a lot of the times people focus too much on expanding rather than refining. You know, you refine, expand.
Serve your
know.
current customers really well. Make sure they're happy. Customer journey is good.
Correct.
LTV is good. Make sure your retention's good. Then you can go, okay, boxes are being ticked.
Yeah,
Everyone's happy.
That's just because I think we're in, again, a fast-paced society where we just get caught up.
yeah,
Yeah.
amen.
It's all about the next move. But like you said, have you completed B before you go on to C?
Yeah, exactly.
Fucking oath.
Throughout your journey, just wrapping up, throughout your journey, your business, everything you've gone
All
through.
the 55 jobs you've had.
All the 50, yeah, all the 55.
Used to think it
jobs.
was a bad thing until recently, but yeah.
What are some of the take homes and what are the biggest things you've learned?
The biggest take homes for me, for sure, is just never be afraid. Like, don't be afraid to just run the ball, man. Like, that's the biggest thing for me. Like, don't try to make too much sense of life, because again, the only thing that really matters is that you will die at the end of it. So it's like, don't try to make too much sense of life and just live it. Like, sit there and just go. If something's not working, pivot. If you're not in a position to be able to do it, we'll figure out how to put yourself in that position. You know, you're your own biggest roadblock in this thing, and a lot of the time that's because you get in your head. You know, so don't waste more time than is needed to don't waste more time than is needed thinking about life, and just focus on living it instead.
Again, a whole nother thing of like self-limiting beliefs and like NLP. Have you looked into NLP much?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
So important. And for those who don't know, NLP is neuro-linguistic programming, which is pretty much learning how to beat the shitty voice in your head that tells you you're shit and you can't do things well, and you actually can. And if you can unlock a positive voice in your head, your level of exposure to the world of what's really possible is literally like there's no limit.
OpenAI will probably do something to help that.
Probably.
Tell me I'm good.
Yeah, please tell me I'm good. Tell me what
Tell
I
me
need
you
to
love
do.
me.
Oh, the thing is with that fucking close to it, it's so scary.
Yeah, I know.
Josh, I just personally wanted to thank you so much. You have said some pretty, like I sat here in silence for a bit of it and just really listening to what you've said and what you're saying, and I love your perspective on life. And yeah, I've got some stuff to think about. It's been a great episode.
Yeah, time to get granular. I feel like that's a big take home. Really analyze what the fuck's going on. Be self-aware. And then once you've made that, pivot to what you actually want to do. Complete each task or each step before you jump to the next. Again, Josh, thank you very, very much for this chat, bro. It's amazing. If you're not already following me on Instagram, Augment House, Black Lotus Creative, let him fix your business because you're probably not doing it right. And we'll chat to you guys on the next episode, guys. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.